All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final panel of the International Asexuality Conference 2023. This is the North American ACEs panel. Before we get going, there are a couple housekeeping things that I want to cover. So first of all, we are going to be taking questions from Slido. You can find a link to that in the description. Importantly, we are not taking questions from the YouTube comments. You have to put your question into Slido. And if you put your question into Slido, you can also upvote other people's questions, and we could take the ones that look like they have the most interest, things like that. Other thing that I want to cover, instead of doing a land acknowledgement, I'm going to put a link into the YouTube chat. So if you follow that link, that's an interactive map, and it'll show you what Indigenous land you are currently on. Since this is an international conference and we're coming from all across North America, this is a great way to figure out what land you are on. Yes, thank you for putting it up there. This is a great way to figure out what land you are on, and I encourage you to learn about the Indigenous communities that you are living near. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get on to introducing our panelists. I'll start with myself. So my name is Krista. Pronouns are she, they, or whatever you want, really. I'm going to be the host for today, and I am coming at you from Michigan in the Midwest United States. And I guess we could go around clockwise. So Marissa.
Thank you for clarifying which way clockwise was. I wasn't sure. Yes, I am Marissa. I use any pronouns. I'm one of the organizers here, as well as been on a few panels, and I am coming from Georgia, United States. So I think, Cove, you're next if we're going clockwise, maybe.
I guess so. That's the okay. That makes sense. Hello, I am Cove. I forgot if other people said identities, but I'll just do it. I use he, him pronouns. I'm ace flux, demi-romantic with a question mark, transgender, and I am in Colorado in the USA.
My name is Devin. I use they, their pronouns. I identify as asexual, pansensual, demi-polyromantic, and genderless. And I am coming to you from the upper Midwest of the United States.
All right, nice. We are all US, it looks like, so this will be fun. So first question I want to cover, just to get at some baselines. So describe where you live or where you are from. What's it like where you live? You know, are you a student? Are you in a urban area or maybe a more rural area? Things like that. Whoever wants to go can go first. Cove, you want to go?
I think mine's a kind of easy one. This might just dead give away where I live, but oh well, I guess. I live in Colorado. Colorado is a weird state because it's purple in terms of like how US describes its political stature, but it's also, I'm in a very, very supportive part. If there are two cities in Colorado that are like very like we are queer supportive, it's this city and the one right next to it. So that's part of why I came to the university I'm in, is because they have a lot of LGBT resource groups, and this is one of the safer places for queer people. It's just less safe in terms of everybody, because that's how society works sometimes. So yeah, I'm right down the street from Pride, where our big Pride is, which is very nice. So yeah, kind of urban. It's a college town, so it's half urban-y, but half kind of old.
Yeah, having a big Pride is always so fun. Marissa, I think you wanted to go next.
Yes. So I'm originally from New York, actually, which is very different from Georgia. I am, however, in Atlanta, which I think is the bluest you're going to get in Georgia. We've had a lot of fun political things, as many of you are probably aware, where we've we've done a few things that have made me proud to be here. We've done a lot of things that have made me not proud to be here. Yeah, it's always interesting because being in Atlanta, you almost get this idea that things are going to turn out differently because everyone here kind of again has that more kind of blue progressive sort of focus. And then you like take a mile step out of there and it's like, oh wow, never mind. So it's really interesting to kind of get just opposite ends of the spectrum just a block apart from each other.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot. The area where I'm currently living is very purple, so right where I am is cool, and then you go maybe like 30 minutes in any direction, it rapidly does not become cool. All right, Devin, you want to go?
Yeah, so I'm currently living in what I consider to be a bigger city. I have been informed that I am incorrect on that viewpoint, but I'm from a very, very rural area. The city I live in is about 60,000. But like the town that I went to high school in was under 1,000 people. So scale. One of my partners is from a much larger city and likes to laugh at me when I say that. Kind-heartedly, of course. This state is also, I'm pretty sure it's considered red purely because of the gerrymandering they do. But as in many areas, the big cities are far more blue and progressive than more rural areas, and I am not in any of even the big cities in the state. So at the same time, I am on medical leave from being a student and still work at the university, which is a far more progressive area, as also tends to be the case.
All right, and Cove, I think you had one more comment.
Yeah, I figured I'd give some context on where I came from when I came to this university. My parents live in a more southern part of Colorado, and that is the particular city is barren and dead and very military. I think we have 4 military bases in the city, so that gives a lot of context on like what a lot of the city is about. And it's weird because like a lot of military families can be supportive and then a lot of them can be very not supportive. And that city has such, that scared me. The city has such a dichotomy that it kind of freaks me out sometimes because they got their first queer club and then something happened to the queer club and it's kind of stressful because I don't know anymore and I just treat this place as safer compared to that place.
Yeah, I guess I'll just speak very briefly for myself. So, my family is from New York. My grandparents are still out in Queens, so I see them pretty regularly. I grew up in Connecticut, though. Went to school in upstate New York. Then I moved to DC for a couple years. Now I'm in the Midwest, so I'm very East Coast based, but I'm slowly making my way west. And a lot of cities mostly also. Where I grew up was a little bit more suburban, but yeah, suburbs are boring. So, all right, I'm going to now go over to one of the questions we got on Slido. Thank you, whoever submitted this. But are there any North American ace arrow groups that people can get involved in? For example, is there a national asexuality conference in the US?
I can speak on this a little. I am not aware of a national asexuality conference. However, there is a national LGBTQ activism conference called Creating Change that has a strong ace delegation every year. In the last few years, although the pandemic has complicated this, there's even been what they call a day-long institute, which they only allow like I think 6 to 8 of those. And there's been an asexuality focused one at that conference. In addition, for anyone in the Midwest in university, there is the Midwest Bisexual, Lesbian, Gay, Transgender, Asexual Collegiate Conference, also known as EMBOTAC, MumbleTAC, things like that, that a lot of universities send delegations to, and is ACE friendly. I've presented on ACE stuff there a few times. And then finally, there's a lot of ACE groups, both on Facebook and Discord. If you're in the Discord server for this conference, I posted a link to the Midwest Discords, the Midwest ACEs Discord server. And my view is coming from the Midwest. But there's a lot of spaces I know regionally. I know there's a Mid-Atlantic ACEs Discord. There's a Northeast ACEs Discord. There's a San Francisco area ACEs Discord. So there's definitely a lot of those sorts of community spaces, and they'll do outings. I know one of the local cities to me has a Discord for ACEs just in that city that did outings to a local craft fair in the fall before the weather got, Midwest wintry. So I don't know of any national conferences, but there are conferences that are ACE friendly that are national, and there are ACE focused community and regional groups all over.
Yeah, so before we move on to the next one, I just want to say our moderator is JV. They're off screen, and they want to say there are some active ACE meetup groups that meet virtually and that anyone can join. So for example, DC ACEs and Arrows and NYC groups. All right, and I think, Marissa, you wanted to speak next?
Yep. Just first off, here in Georgia, we actually had a meetup with a bunch of ACEs recently. I missed it, and I am very sad about that. But just know that, they do happen. And also, there are some more international orgs, Avon is UK-based, but does a lot of international. And a lot of times you'll see people trying to plan meetups through there. They've got actually in their forum a place where people can speak about where they are and try and meet up through there. I know it's been successful for some people, not successful for other people. So yeah, even if it's not like a specific group, I do think these other resources are useful for making those connections.
Absolutely. All right. And Cove.
Mine's a rather quick one by comparison, but for younger folk in particular, I'm not saying this doesn't apply to older folk, but it very much depends on who you contact here. But universities, if you go to the university website and find the contact of the LGBT groups at the university, you can ask them to attend their meetings if you're not a student. And like here, I'm a board member, executive board member for our Out in STEM group, and we allow non-students to come to our meetings and attend just to build a community and meet the locals. Even if they're just visiting the university, they can come in. And so you can get in contact with the universities around where you're at and see if they have like meetups outside of their meetings or stuff like that. And usually like clubs like OSTEM, they have a national conference every year. So we have our conference this fall. I think it's in October. Don't quote me on that. But you can find the Out in STEM national website and see their conference. So I'm just saying that everything I'm saying for Out in STEM applies to other different societies as well. And you can probably find them and get in contact and see if there's any specific things inside of those.
Out in STEM also has a Discord server, and there's actually ACEs in STEM Discord as well. That I actually found out through this conference last year.
Yeah, a lot of different groups. JV also wanted to add that the ACE Date Space Discord has a meetup channel too. I think that's also been promoted a lot through the conference, so you might have seen that elsewhere. All right, that's actually a really good segue to next question that I want to hit. Sounds like a lot of you are at universities. How is or was that for ACE acceptance? University, us?
No, never.
Do you want to start things off, Cove?
Yeah. So I'd say it's accepting. By comparison, I get to do a lot of like talking to people and education, and because we have our like 3 main queer groups, I meet a lot of other ace people. In some of the previous panels, I've mentioned my one issue I've had, and it's not even like a aphobia thing. It's just some aces are very enthusiastic thing, and sometimes they make assumptions that I'm like them when I'm not. And that's the main thing I run into sometimes. It's like I get to meet other aces and we get along and it's like great, but then they'll assume things about me and then I feel like I can't ever tell them the truth. So that's my one barrier, but everything else seems very chill here. And I get to walk around campus with all my pins on my bag. So that's really nice to be able to do that.
So cute. All right. Yeah, that is the thing where people find out you're asexual, and that's like really, in the grand scheme of things, that's a pretty small part of our personality and only one identity we hold. So that can be hard. Marissa, I think you wanted to go next.
Yeah, this is an oversimplification, but as an undergrad, it was very difficult. Now, as a grad student, it's gotten a lot better. As an undergrad, I feel like there were a lot of, well, first of all, people didn't know what it was. People made a lot of assumptions. People just kind of, I don't know. It was strange because it went from no one knowing what it was or like believing it or whatever to everyone assuming things about me because I was asexual. So it was kind of like, no, don't go from one end to the other. Like, let's meet in the middle. Come on. So, and that was hard too because there was one other ace person on campus, and we were very different. So then I think people started to see us in light of each other and make more assumptions based on that. So now, as a grad student and a former TA, I think it's become a lot easier, in part because, again, actually, I'm working with people who are ace, which is great. But now it's a more, I think we're all more comfortable saying it, more comfortable understanding that, you know, there's nuance to the definition, nuance to who we are as individuals. So I don't feel like we're having to see each other in context of each other. We get to just kind of exist together, if that makes sense, with our own experiences. So I feel like it went from kind of judgy and confusing to supportive and freeing.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I think it's interesting because, well, to date myself, about 30 years old. And it's sort of, as I was an undergrad, it was like all these ACE orgs started popping up. My friends started the first ACE org at my undergrad. And now as a grad student, it's a lot more established and a lot more accepted. So it's interesting being able to see that journey for sure.
That really echoes my experiences as well, where things have changed a lot over the time I've been there. Due to my disabilities, I am at this point considered a non-traditional student because I've just been there that long. But like when I first got there, I remember I was in a class that was part of the LGBTQ studies certificate that the university has that defined asexuality as not wanting to have sex. That was one of the first times I was maybe a sophomore at the time. And I stayed after class and was like, hey, can I talk to you, professor? And they were incredibly open. And I had actually forgotten about this until much later. That professor was introducing me at a event I was one of the main speakers for and brought that event up as like their first experience with me, which is true. And that I've been educating them ever since and just, you know, made me blush like a tomato in front of the room full of people. But that professor changed their slides and their teaching to correct that. And in their defense, I'm pretty sure that the definition they used was right out of the textbook. There was no ACE presence on campus. There was no, like, I was the first out ACE person on my campus. I say out because I'm certain there were others. I was there was only one LGBTQ club on campus at the time, and they actually asked me to give a presentation on basically intro to ACE 101 type stuff for like 3 years in a row. I started an ACE club at that school, which kind of got killed with COVID. But so basically, it's been really cool to see the change over the time I've been there. And it's not just me either. I'm talking about things I did because that's what I have the personal experience with. But I've seen there's more out aces. There's other people that are doing education and just existing, but existing in a way that lets other people know it's okay for them to exist as well.
For sure. All right, I think to go off of that, I'm going to move on to this question. So, are these ACE communities or these queer communities that you're a part of, are they welcoming of different people and of different identities that live in the area? And sort of, you know, how good are they at that? Are there ways that they can improve as well?
I can start this one off. I think they try, at least in my area. One of the big issues that I see is accessibility. I am disabled and it impacts my ability to partake in various things. And for a while with the pandemic, things actually became a lot more accessible for a moment there. But they've been moving back away from that. They've stopped offering virtual attendance options for meetings even. Like even the ability to just call in and listen, they've stopped offering. So like accessibility is one of the biggest ways that they struggle. The area I live in is also very white, and that is reflected in the composition of these groups. However, due to that reflection, it can make students of color and people of color in community groups not feel as comfortable going there. Because if there's 20 people in a group proportionately for my area that's a little over 90% white, that means there's one, maybe two people of color, and being the only person that looks like you in a space is not a safe feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. It's really funny that over the pandemic, people, you know, started caring about disability issues, and now we've kind of just gone back to normal and we're ignoring that that ever happened. And yeah, definitely echoing mostly white people in my area as well. Cove, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo a lot of that a second time. But as a board member of OSTEM, we were looking at some of the things we had people give feedback on from last semester, or last year, not last semester. And we had like one person of color member tell us that like they can't attend meetings anymore because they're the only one there. And we felt really bad. And so we came into this year thinking like we're going to host intersectionality meetings and talk about like the intersections between being queer and other identities. The first meeting didn't go great because we had someone racist show up and that was not good. So we learned some lessons there. But we've kind of adapted it to start gearing towards disability because almost all of us on the board have a disability of some sort. Whether it's visible or invisible or whatever. So we're having our like roundtable panel intersectionality meeting about that in a week, I think. So we're trying to incorporate more things and we're trying to help, but it's hard a lot of the time, and we're learning. And even some of us, like we have someone on the board who is from Korea, and they don't feel confident in talking about that because they haven't had much experience with it. And I think that's a lot of what I've heard with people who want to give a voice, but also they feel like they don't have enough to say. I feel that way every time I bring up ACE things for the community here at my university. It's like I can only comment so much about myself before I kind of start to lose ground or lose voice in the area. So yeah, the Pride office here is like very, very, very much trying to like incorporate everybody, and that's really nice. Also, every meeting we go through the list of dietary restrictions, make sure everyone gets met in that regard, and then also with hearing and stuff like that. Closed captions whenever we can do it. Just those things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you were saying echoes what's been going on in the group at my university that I run, where I've been forcing people to talk more about intersectional identities and things like that. But yeah, we definitely had sort of one of the early on discussions where we were talking about race. Someone was making a lot of like colorful comments, and we ended up having to throw them out of the group because it just wasn't stopping. And you run into a lot of that. All right. Oh, Marissa.
Yes, related to everything that was just discussed, I found that I really only do online groups, which is very upsetting because, as I mentioned, I work with, or I guess worked with a bunch of asexual people at my school. And one in particular is always like, let's meet up, let's do a thing. But I have a hearing disorder that makes it hard to do things in person. So I kind of like have just taken to doing things online as much as I can. And so a lot of the online groups I've found, though, I still feel like they well, I'll bring up one in particular, which is a car or aspex. I can't speak. Aspex committed against. Sorry, aspex committed to anti-racism. I promise I know the name of the group I am part of. I have just not gotten much sleep. So. So with that group, it's obviously about anti-racism. And it's really interesting to see how different members view racism itself or view ableism or misogyny or like all these things, because it is slightly, I'm not going to say location based because that's not what I mean exactly. But it definitely, there's a different context, there's a different connotation, there's different things that really need maybe more of the focus is a way to put it based on where the location is. So it's interesting because, and also I've done stuff for International Asexuality Day, which has really expanded my way of thinking, because here in North America, I think, I mean, we are very North American centric. The world knows that we are too. A bunch of my international friends have, said as much. And I'm like, you're right. That's very true. So it's interesting being a part of these different groups and feeling at once so much harmony and so much community, and at the other hand seeing just the exact opposite, right? So much disharmony, so many ways in which we can grow, so many ways in which we assume we know everything and our experience is absolute, and then we realize, oh no, this is not just a problem of me being an individual, it's also a problem of the North American sort of viewpoint.
Yeah, really glad you brought up IAD, International Asexuality Day, because that was started a couple years ago. I don't even remember when, but as an effort to sort of take the asexual community, make it a lot less Western centric. And it's really a shame because this is an international conference and we were planning all these different regional panels. The only regional panels that happened this year are this one, North American ACEs, and then Southeast Asian ACEs, which I haven't gotten around to watching yet because that was at like 3 a.m. my time, but I want to watch it soon. But if you go to the international conference in 2021, there were a ton of regional panels that year, and that year, the North American one actually got converted to an Indigenous ACEs of North America panel. So that's a really cool one to check out if you're interested in that sort of thing. All right, yeah, there's the link. Go check out the link, because so much of asexuality is, I'm going on a rant now, but so much of asexuality is very English centric, very Western centric, and as much as we can do to disrupt that is very cool. All right, going to move on to sort of a similar question. How do you think the cultural norms in your area of the US impact how and when you disclose your ace identities, and more broadly, how you live your life? Marissa, do you want to start?
Sure. As I mentioned, I live in Atlanta, but I have family that's like an hour outside of it in a decidedly less blue area. And there's just, there's all the reason, but at the same time, no reason for me to bring it up because it's going to just be kind of a weird, uncomfortable conversation that I know people are not going to understand. And this is obviously 9 times out of 10. 1 times out of 10, it goes fine or has gone fine or etc. But it's just something where it's kind of like I've been thinking about this a lot recently, the question of how and where to focus your energies. And it's weird because, where it's easier and safer and etc. It on one hand, it almost makes less sense because it's like, well, they're covered. Like put your efforts where like it's harder. But I've just noticed that sometimes building the community within those communities, right, is also important. So I feel like when I'm over in Atlanta, with friends, with peers, with whatever, it's fine. I can bring it up, no issue. But once I kind of step outside of there, especially when I bring up other things about myself, such as my gender, it's just a conversation where I'm just afraid to learn something about the other person that I might be talking to. And I'm trying to get through that. I'm trying to get better about that because sometimes that's the thing worth knowing and that's the thing worth challenging. But other times it's honestly not. And so I'm really curious to see what y'all feel because I don't have an answer for that one.
Yeah, I think that's very relatable. Sometimes it's worth challenging, and sometimes it's just not worth the effort because, we should be able to just exist. All right, Cove, I think you wanted to go next.
Yeah, I'll start by answering Marissa's question and then go into my comment. This is a very niche example, but we had one day where 2 drunk girls came into GSA. Neither of them were queer or anything, but they just wanted to see what was going on and like ask. And they were generally fine, but then they kind of cornered me and another person, and they like interrogated us on our identities and like having to explain them and everything like that. And they were drunk. So it's like, that was one of those cases where I'm like, I want you to understand and learn these things, and you're here. It seems like you actually want to learn these things, maybe, but you're also not in the state of mind to learn these things. And it was such a weird interaction and kind of felt bad afterward because some of it was just questioning the meaning of stuff to the point that it's like, I can't deal with this questioning right now because I'm questioning myself. So I think when it comes to times where I'm not comfortable with myself, that's when I usually like close up and like keep a lot of my comments to myself so that I don't um, so that I don't impede my understanding of myself. I don't know if that makes sense. But other times, if I'm feeling very confident with my identity, then I'll be more out there with it. I think this applies the most to gender for me. When I feel the most like trans manny, that's when I'll correct people the most. But if I'm not feeling very good about myself, then I won't correct people about my pronouns because I'm trying to keep myself together. I hope that makes sense. So that's how I devote my energy usually. And then for ace stuff in the area, on campus, 100%, I'll come out as all of my identities. Not to everybody. I mean, I'm in a major that is majority men, like cis, white, hetero men, and they don't, they can see all my pins and stuff. I'm not going to bring it up to them because they're the people they are. So places like that, no, but generally around campus, I'll still have pins. The thing is, though, when I'm traveling, I have to ride a 3-hour bus down to my parents, which means I have to go through Denver. And when I'm traveling through Union Station, all the pins come off. Like everything comes off because my second experience in Union Station, I kind of had my life threatened. And it was a wild experience. And I don't know if it was because I was queer or not, but it still left an impact on how I travel. So traveling, I take everything off just in case, let people misgender or whatever. But then as soon as I'm at either location, I'll generally just read where I'm at and come out depending on that. Be out depending on that.
Wow, I'm so sorry you've had like both the people who think it's okay to show up at a meeting drunk and then also getting threatened in a public place. That's super scary. I'm so sorry. I have heard that from a lot of queer people though, like when you're traveling, whether that's through the US or elsewhere, but I think particularly with the US, just the gerrymandering and the way it's all set up, thinking about, hey, is it safe for me to look like this in this area? Things like that. All right, Devin, I think you're last to go.
Yeah. Oh, hi. We are being visited by the dog. Olive, sit up. Let them see you.
Oh my god, a baby.
Service dog. Very cuddly service dog. So I'm going to focus on ace identities for this one because if I talk about my gender, it would be a entirely additional conversation, honestly. And I've had a number of negative experiences where I'm not certain what they were about, but it was more likely my gender or just general visible queerness than specific aceness. That said, I think what affects me most in this, more than timeline, like, or more than the specific culture where I am, is actually like time. When I first came out, I was very quiet about it, but then I hit a phase where I was very loudly out and like talking, doing education all over the place, talking to folks, bringing it up. A lot of times now, like if it's someone like that's a very surface level connection, I'll often not mention more than queer, because I've been out as ace for 14 years at this point, and it just kind of gets exhausting doing the same one-on-one stuff all the time. And like I'm willing to do it when I'm actively signed up for that, like in conference or convention settings or when speaking at various college campuses, etc. But if I haven't like given that consent and actively chosen to be spending my energy that way, I don't have the energy to spare.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely have done the same thing while traveling where like the pins come off. I wear a lot of beanies because although from this angle you can't really tell, but like there is like color. And normally my hair is all dyed color, but I got it cut and people were like, you should leave it how it is. It looks so cool. And I was like, I guess. So I'm just waiting for it to like grow a little bit more so I can get it, the colored parts cut off and then dye it again. Anyways, hey, look, dyeing hair is part of queer culture. I can you pop up the banner again?
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
It's all good. I just want people to see your name.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So what helps, like, again, I live in a more conservative area, so that can actually be a bit of an advantage in some cases because people won't necessarily associate asexuality with queerness. You can be like, I've had moments where I'm like, oh, I'm asexual, and someone will get really aggressive and violent about like, oh, the like, you one of those LGBTs? And I was like, oh, it means I don't like anyone that way. And it can be a defensive thing, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but it is a way I can keep safe in a setting where I wouldn't otherwise be safe. And sometimes I have to put safety, and this isn't just for me, this is for anyone. But sometimes I have to put safety above my desire to be out and loud and whatnot, because like I've literally had my physical body grabbed and stopped for people to confront me about my queerness. I've had stuff thrown at me. I've had slurs shouted. I don't live in a particularly progressive area. So yeah, culture impacts things, but what impacts things more than that for me is just timeline. I've noticed my own activity, like my own volume on the matter changing over the years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And again, so sorry all those horrible things have happened to you. I know that's something that we've talked about in ACAR a lot, which is a group Marissa brought up earlier. It's dedicated to anti-racism, but still sort of same idea where if you want to confront someone like your family about racist ideas, your safety comes first, and that holds true no matter like what conversation topic you're having. So we need to turn things around, talk about happy things. How do you find Ace Joy?
Community. Absolutely, like my favorite part about being Ace is the community. I also love that maybe it's just because this is the community I'm in, but I swear asexuality has a lot more like community-wide in-jokes than most other communities. Like the Black Ring, which mine doesn't look particularly black anymore because it's quite old. And cake and invading certain countries. Like there's a lot of just community-wide in-jokes that I don't see as much in other identities I'm in, and I don't know, like, I don't know if that's just I'm less active in those. I don't think it's the case, but I don't know. Community is definitely how I find Ace Joy.
I think that's a great answer. Cove, you want to go next?
You kind of stole my answer because I was going to make all the ace jokes as my answer. So now that kind of got messed up, but I can give actual commentary. I think regarding like the different communities thing, I have seen some of the culture in some of the other communities I'm a part of, and I see it a lot in GSA. GSA, how to explain this briefly? It is a supportive place. It has all kinds of queer people, and we all have identities in common. But you can also see people separate inside of it. And you can see like there's this group of people, and there's this group of people. Dragon. Oh my god, I love it so much.
For context,
Dragons
I
bring
am
me into
6'2". I am 6'2". This thing is as tall as I am.
Oh my god.
that brings me age joy. That right there.
I was so not expecting that when their camera turned back on. That was amazing.
So
oh my god, a friend.
I have so many dragons, y'all. Anyways, I apologize for interrupting, Cove.
I will always be interrupted for dragons. Okay, no, back on topic. Sometimes GSA separates into these groups, and I find that I kind of end up in the ACE group because none of us really kind of get along with the other groups. And that's a negative thing, but a good thing. And I hope that people understand why it's both of those things. It's like, yes, we together can like get along and be similar and have similar personalities, but also we feel separated from the rest of the people there sometimes. And I struggle going to GSA now. I'll go for specific people and not for the events anymore just because of that. So that happens. And when it comes to the internet, I definitely feel sometimes just different from some of the other, like the gay community, like gay men or bi or stuff like that. I just don't align with a lot of those people. So that's something I notice. And sometimes falling back to the ace community and finding other ace people that get my perspective specifically is very, very affirming. So that brings me ace joy. I have a very specific ace spec friend that everything about our ace identities is like pretty much similar. Like we're both sex positive, we both read fan fiction, and we're both like demi and flux, but also we get our barriers when it comes to jokes and stuff, so we can really just jibe. And I talk to them every single day of my life, so they bring me ace joy.
Ace friends. Yes, found family and ace friends are so important. Like I don't know, I've always found you get a bunch of aces together, it's like we're all on the same page. We all get it. And it's like queer spaces also great. There's also a lot of good stuff from there. Because it's good to have a sense of the wider community as well. But like you get a bunch of aces together and I feel like we all tend to click pretty well.
Our lovely moderator would like to include that in-jokes tend to help people feel included and part of a larger thing, which so many of us need.
Absolutely. All right,
Dragons, ace cards.
Yeah, I don't know any other community that has that many symbols. Go ahead, Marissa. Sorry.
No. Because I mean, this is all joyful, and I want to add to it something that might sound a little strange on the surface. I actually think there's joy to be had in ace activism, and like obviously, there's a lot of planning and coordination and stress that can go into that. There's backlash you may receive, absolutely, but there's also kind of like what Cove was just saying with people feeling like that affirmation. There's you getting to find people who just light up upon realizing, oh, there's a word for who and what I am. And just the idea that like you can be part of change, part of making something better. Going back to a car, or as I like to say, Apex committed to anti-racism. See, I do know the name. It's obviously upsetting that there is racism in the ace community, but there's racism everywhere. So there is joy to be found in the fact that a bunch of people are coming together to try and do something about it. I run an aspec visibility platform called Ace Chat, and people share their stories there about finding out they were ace, about just sometimes the joys about being ace, but sometimes the struggles. And there's joy to be had in sharing those experiences and knowing others relate to them. There's joy to be had through this conference. And someone could argue, this was more community based because we're all coming together to listen to these panels and et cetera, stuff like that. But I also think there's activism behind this because, I mean, we're talking about meetups, we're talking about issues in our different, well, we're all one big community, but our sub-communities as well. And so I think that, again, there's definitely other factors involved. But I don't think we would keep doing this if there wasn't some joy to it, because I think just otherwise it would be a lot. So I think just recognizing that joy and really, really just kind of diving into it and embracing it is important.
Yeah, absolutely. JV also wants to add so many symbols and in-jokes also might help us feel more valid as an identity, as differentiated from other rainbow letters. Plus rings, etc., are ways to identify other aces in the wild. Which, yeah, I always forget that a lot of these symbols are supposed to be like code for how you find other people. I've never personally worn the rings, but whenever I see them, I always think like, oh, is that an ace ring?
It is a very important note that the ace ring is specifically a black ring on the right middle finger, not other fingers. Other fingers is a symbol of something very different. So that's just worth being aware of. That is a very specific symbol.
Yeah, and I think arrow is white ring on the other hand.
Mm-hmm.
I think same finger.
Yep. Yeah. I don't believe white rings are a symbol on of other things as well. So that one I don't think is as particular. But I've seen people get not in trouble, but in situations they would have preferred not to be in, because of wearing a black ring on a different finger.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next topic. So, do you have any suggestions on how one can organize Ace Arrow events or Avon event? Cove, go ahead.
Okay, so this is advice that works for me. It's not going to work for everyone. I'm going to say that right now because I'm a very particular kind of person. With that said, sometimes you just gotta do it. Sometimes you just you can't psych yourself up for it. You can't wait for the moment to come. Sometimes you just have to tell people I want to do this. How do I coordinate this? And so when it comes to the ACE events I've been holding at my university this year, I'm only a sophomore. I'm new to this. I'm new to the university, but I really wanted to do this because this is something I struggled with my freshman year. So I applied to be on the board of OSTEM, got on just because my pitch was, hey, I want to incite something here. And then I told the board of OSTEM, hey, I want an ACE roundtable. Can we do this during ACE Awareness Week? And so we found where ACE Awareness Week was. We had to move it the week before because it's the same week as Halloween, and we needed to have a Halloween event because it's gay Christmas. So we reserved gay Christmas, and then we came back and did our ACE roundtable right after or right before. But told them that, and then at the ACE roundtable, one of the people that works for the Pride office came, and the Pride office was like, hey, can we do more ACE events for the whole university? So I was like, yes, I want to help with that. So now I'm in contact with the Pride office so that we can keep doing this in future years. We have an ACE cake day every year at the university where ACEs can come get cake, and we will have, I think it's the International ACE Day. We'll have another event this semester. So yeah, sometimes you just gotta go find the people, get into contact with them, gather whoever you need, and just start advertising it, is my advice.
I love Ace Cake Day. I really want to steal that. Marissa, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I definitely think that having more people involved does make this easier. And having people who already have access to some resources, some networking, some experience is also useful. So don't be afraid I mean, I'm not going to put y'all on the spot. You can reach out to me. You can, but I think there are others in the community, maybe in this panel. Again, I'm not going to put anyone on the spot, but that they'd be fine with you reaching out to, so long as it's respectful and not demanding or anything. But in a way where it's especially if it's something where you want to help, right? We're always looking for help with planning some of these bigger events, and in turn would love to help plan some of those smaller, more centralized events. So just don't be afraid, so long as you're going to go about it in a way that's nice and polite and all of those things. So long as you have that, people are going to be interested in helping you. They might be too busy with something else, but more often than not, in my experience, they'll have someone else they can recommend or be able to help you at another time.
Yeah, I found with a lot of things like this, whether it's, getting on the board of the queer org that's nearby or getting involved with a online group like the group that organized this conference, a lot of times you just have to say, hi, I want to help. And people are so grateful for the help. I had to apply to get on the board for the graduate version of OSTEM. We called it GoSTEM. And they had this whole application and I filled it out and they were like, great, you are one of 2 people that applied. Get over here. These groups always need help. And we're always so happy when we get it because we need it.
Yeah. Last year when I got on the board, no one applied to be treasurer. So I was like, well, I guess I'm the treasurer now. Oh, it is stressful. There's a reason why no one applied, but we need these roles filled so that we can do events for people. And so sometimes if you have the time commitment, maybe it's worth trying, And if you find that it's not for you, usually there are people to help you as well. So, for sure. Oh, and also how I got looped into this, why I'm on the screen right now. I just met an ace person on Avon, and then it just tumbled and tumbled and tumbled, and they got looped into this, so now I am here. And so sometimes just becoming friends with people can lead to things like this as well. So that goes back to networking.
For anyone who's heard the quote, it's who you know. Most opportunities I've had, it's because I did something. And then I'm sure I'm not the only one who has that moment of like imposter syndrome mixed with anxiety whenever there's like, who wants to help out with this? And you're like, oh, surely I'm not good enough. Every time I'm coming at that from the other side of the equation, I don't care if you are 3 years old. Like, if you can help, please sign up. Like, and it doesn't have to be much. Like, there's so many roles at so many different levels of commitment, everything from like orchestrating like huge parts of events to just like, hey, can you just like show up and be on hand in case we need someone to run an errand or something. Like, there's a huge different spectrum for any level of capacity. So even if you're not sure you have the time, just be upfront about that. Don't be like, oh yeah, I'll do this big task and then follow through, because that will frustrate people. But if you're like, hey, I'm really busy, is there any way I can help? That you just need a body, you just need a little bit of something. Maybe there's a thing that I have a skill that makes it that I can do it in 5 minutes, but someone without that skill is going to take a couple hours. Like I can think of like website changes is a big one that comes up for that, where I have experience with that and I can tweak it. Like I can do the little like things in 5 minutes. But when I was on vacation and my internship coordinator had to do it herself, she took several hours because she had to keep finding tutorials on how to do every little thing. So like, everyone has skills. Everyone has things that they can do, and finding ways to use those. So yeah, don't be afraid to sign up is really the biggest thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know something Marissa and I actually have talked about, because we've both been involved with accessibility for conferences like these. And I don't know, I didn't help out my first year because I assumed you needed to know a lot of things about accessibility, but like, we just need bodies answering emails is really all we need. And sometimes it just sort of comes down to that and who has the time. Okay. So oh, you want to go?
What was the question again?
Oh, it was this one. I feel like we've covered it though.
Do you have any suggestions on how you can organize it? Okay, I just want to mention this, even though it doesn't actually answer the question. I mentioned that I just do things. Like sometimes I know that if I don't just outright go and do it and commit myself to it, then I'll never do it. So I had that happen with my YouTube channel. I was just like, you know what? I struggled finding out AceFlux, and I can't find that many resources on AceFlux, so I'm just gonna make a YouTube channel and talk about it. And so you can also organize things in that way, and by making those channels or forums or Twitter posts or whatever you do, whatever media, you'll meet people that way as well, and then you can coordinate things that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, be the content you want to see in the world. So we have a little less than 20 minutes left. So if you haven't submitted a question on Slido, you should go do that. There's a link in the description. We've gotten a lot of really good questions so far. There's a couple that we still need to get to. So please submit stuff and we'll answer your question.
Quick side note, I want to throw in on the previous topic. Perfection is the enemy of good. Like, if you're trying to do everything perfect, it's actually something I'm struggling with social media right now. Like, I have this idea of a platform I want to create, but I'm so afraid of doing everything right and that I don't have the knowledge or skill to do everything perfect. But I haven't done it yet, and I've been considering this for like 5 years at this point. Just do it. Yes, I'm being a hypocrite. Just do it.
I fall into that too. I procrastinated my video on polyamory for months because I was like, well, I haven't dated, I don't know. But then I was like, just make the video and then later bring on a friend who's polyamorous and have them correct anything. And I did that, and that helped a lot. So just do it, and then it will resolve itself.
Oh yeah, Coke, you run like you have a whole YouTube channel, right?
Maybe. It's very small. I need to update it sometime. I was probably going to do it this week after the convention. I'll probably do a video about being a part of this. Here's the link. Don't judge me. Please and thank you.
Hey, Cove. You know what makes your YouTube channel a million times better than mine? It exists. Like, you're doing the thing. You're doing the thing, and that's what matters.
Okay.
I said this on a different panel, but there is no negative self-talk on this panel.
Oh shit, I might not be qualified after all.
Yeah. Neither.
It's fine. We're all going to get there. I will just keep repeating that. All right. Now that we had that lovely little discussion, let's move to a completely different topic that I also wanted to get to. Are there assumptions made about ACEs from North America?
All right. I'll only do two because I keep talking too much. That all aces are prude is the first one, or sex repulsed or anything like that. I feel that's a big one, and sometimes it's us putting it on ourselves, and then sometimes it's other people putting it on us. But I think that's a big one, and I felt like I got pushed into that box a lot by my environment. And then, oh my God, what was the other one? It was something about like media and TV. I don't know. I'll just leave it to the one I said. I think that was a big one.
We'll come back to you. It's fine. Marissa, you wanted to go?
Yes, this kind of relates to something I was saying earlier. This idea that we are, and this is an assumption that I think can be very true, that we are kind of nearsighted in terms of our goals for the ACE community or our knowledge about how it affects how other communities are affected. And by that, I mean, obviously, being able to be yourself out in the open is very important. But for a lot of areas, I think in North America, and I don't want to overgeneralize because obviously on this panel alone, we've talked about how hard it can be to do that. But there are obviously places outside of North America where it could be criminalized to come out as ace. It could be something that, I honestly think here in North America, there are times where you might even have to fear for your life. But I think in places outside of North America, that might be an even more common occurrence than we realize. There's also ways different different identities intersect. I mean, in the UK, being trans, being ace, being all these things, obviously there's a lot going on here with that. But I know specifically in the UK, I'd say maybe even a little bit more in some ways. Maybe not as of this week. There's been a lot happening this week, but leading up to that. So it is an assumption that we kind of only focus on North American ACE issues, but I think it's a fair assumption because I think a lot of us do that. And I think it's in one vein it's fair because, you see what you see in front of you and you want to fix it, and that's great. But I think we need to try and make room and time for these initiatives outside of North America too, because it's all part of the same fight that needs to happen.
Absolutely. I think that was really well put.
I have one on this call.
Taking off that, the one I wanted to say is this might pertain more to just like Western white aces in general than just North American. Mm-hmm. But like there's this assumption even within the queer community that that's all of us, that all aces are just AFAB white folks from Western countries, by which I mostly mean like US, Canada, and UK, Australia, New Zealand, like that sort of cultural idea. I realize Australia and New Zealand are not physically West, but like there's definitely an assumption that like, and I think it ties into the whole like, oh, asexuality is just people trying to be special or trying to be part of the queer community when they're not actually, and all those old assumptions that have been around since before asexuality was a word itself, which dates back to the 70s, I believe, if you're talking just purely about the orientation, and obviously the word existed before that. Anyways, so I think the biggest assumption that I see is that it's like we're the only ones. And that's why a lot of like online events tend to be geared around either North American or European time zones as well, even though if you go by like population of the planet and thus theoretically ace population of the planet, that's not where the things should be centered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think are we good on this question? Cool. All right. We've got a little over 10 minutes left. So I wanted to sort of hit this spicy question to see what advice we have. The US Christian right has been increasingly targeting ace people. How do we push back?
I need to check a source on this one.
Ooh, a source.
Not on it being targeted, but I was told by a Christian friend of mine that one of the disciples is basically described as asexual in the Bible. And I normally have to bring up arguments on trans and non-binary identities more often. But my favorite tactic when arguing with the Christian right is to use their own book. And the point that like trans men are explicitly named in the Bible. And using facts like that to basically argue with them, as well as a lot of the verses they like to quote are actually mistranslations. And I don't want to go too far off on a religious tangent because I know a lot of folks have religious trauma. But I like to use their own book against them, and I'm going to check for this source if I can find it.
That's really interesting. I didn't actually know that trans men are mentioned in the Bible.
The exact language used is natural born eunuch, which has been described by biblical scholars as men born without phalli, and has been interpreted as what else can that mean, basically.
That's really interesting.
Obviously, intersex people would likely be included in that as well. I think most folks know that ancient Judaism recognizes 6 genders. Ancient religions are a lot more diverse, and the very like conservative narrowing is actually a relatively recent addition to it that the far right likes to use to promote their own agendas.
Yeah, that's something that I can't comment much on. I haven't looked into a lot of this stuff, but it fascinates me when you learn some stuff in history, and sometimes it feels like we're going backwards at times, where like other cultures at other time periods were like a lot further than where we are now in some ways, but then in other ways very different. But it's funny how things like change through the years. Like gay sex will be like perfectly accepted, and then gay sex will be like less accepted, but like it still exists. And then it's weird. That applies to all the identities, but that's the specific one I've seen a lot of. It's very history's weird, but cool, but weird.
Yeah, jumping off of all of this, and I had been talking about this a little bit earlier, I think like we need to keep in mind that this is how these people either view themselves or are presenting themselves. But I like to fight fire with fire and say, you know, you realize you're not being very Christian, are you? And this is coming from a Jewish agnostic perspective, who has dealt with a lot of quote unquote Christianity thrown at me. And when someone belittles you or threatens you or et cetera, because of your asexuality, I mean, like Devin was saying, it just, biblically speaking, doesn't make much sense. Morally speaking, it makes zero sense. And I have a lot of friends who are Christian in the way that I define Christianity, which is, you know, like trying to do good based on the Bible and also like Jesus is your savior. Like that's really how I view Christianity. And with them, they've all been very understanding and accepting towards me, my sexuality, my ethnicity, my religious well, whatever agnosticism falls under, but that. So I think that like one way of pushing back when this happens is just highlighting the fact that they're going against what they themselves are preaching, showing the hypocrisy in everything that they are doing, and trying to really highlight the ways in which this is just causing harm. And if that's their goal, well, I mean, well played. But if they're actually, because you know, like there's that argument that like, oh, they really do mean it though, and they're trying to save you, and they think that you're actually a sinner, and blah blah, etc. And like, I know I just said blah blah blah, but I actually think that holds some water. That some people maybe do think that way. I had a friend who was, again, this was more the quote unquote Christian, who like tried to convert me, and it was like a whole thing. But even with her, she was able to be talked into this idea of like, you know, this is worst case scenario, right? But the whole kind of hate the sin, love the sinner thing, if that's like the worst option, it's still an option I'm willing to take, I guess, in terms of it being bounds beyond what some of these other people are doing. That's not what I'm aspiring to by any means, but I think that's the worst we should expect and allow from people who claim to be a part of this religion.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, I would agree with all that.
And again, I want to word this right. If I say something wrong, then tell me, please. But I find that some people on campus, we have a everyone refers to it as a cult on campus that tries to like purposefully target some of the queer students. And that's a problem, but also some of the queer students that get targeted turn against like all religion and will make statements on like broader religion or like broader Christianity. And we shouldn't make enemies. Does that make sense? Like we shouldn't also start stereotyping and creating misconceptions and stuff like that for other communities, because we deal with that and it's frustrating, and not all people in one broad group are going to be the same as the experience you had. So I noticed that a lot with like some broad comments, and sometimes my board has to like step in and be like, hey, this is a little lot that you said. Can we tone it down a bit, please?
No, I think that's a really good point, because I think when you look broadly at the US, what's been happening for, you know, I mean, I've only noticed it since 2016, something's happened. But I'm sure even before then, you've got these two sort of sides of the political spectrum that are refusing to communicate with each other now and sort of are getting farther and farther apart from each other. And it's really a problem, because we've got a side that's making it difficult for the other side to, you know, exist and live. And how do you bridge that gap and like try to even reach out to people that are still in the middle and things like that? I think is very important. Devin, did you end up finding your source? Otherwise, I can also try to answer this.
I did not find a good source. All the ones that I can find are from relatively conservative right-wing groups. I don't want to link those both for traffic and whatnot. But I believe the person that was being talked about by the person who told me that was John the Baptist, based on what I'm finding. I don't particularly care to comb through the book to find better sources myself. I have a fair amount of trauma around Christianity myself.
That's totally fair. I think just knowing like that it exists somewhere, people can also feel free to go digging on your own because there's a lot of sources out there about
It
the
is like
Bible.
most theological things, I'm certain, very debated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess my 2 cents on this issue, and I don't even know if this will help at all, is I sort of see the U.S. Christian right these days as less of a religious movement and more of a political movement, really. So, like, the way we push back is by doing some organizing of our own and forming these ACE groups, joining queer groups, being interested in human rights groups and things like that. Because the way we're going to keep them from like developing legislation that gets through the door and gets passed is by forming those blocks and like keep being active in ACE organizations, like, the one putting on this conference or your local one and things like that. That's really all I got. So,
On that level, as has been mentioned in the chat, allying with more progressive churches, because there are some out there. There's a website called like Gay Church USA or something. I don't remember the website. I've never actually looked at it. But I know there is a source that lists churches that are at least purport to be LGBTQ friendly. I think we all know that being LGBTQ friendly does not necessarily mean ACE friendly, but it's often a good starting spot.
mm-hmm.
And working with those groups can find allyship, because in my experience, a lot of those churches are also really frustrated and just kind of over the more right-winged ones, and how like they get people grouped together, basically.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, it is just about 4:20 where I am, which is Eastern time, which means we've been going for an hour 20 minutes. So I think let's wrap it up there. If anybody has any closing thoughts, or we've plugged a number of social media as we've been going. If anyone wants to, I don't know, plug some more or drop it in the chat again so that we don't lose it, that's good with me. On my end, I have a Twitter. I'm at CRISPRCas9, but I don't use it that often. It's mostly like weird grad school things. I am on the Discord, though, if you want to connect that way. I guess we'll go clockwise again. Marissa, do you want to go next?
Yeah, just for connecting, you said?
Yeah. Or if you have any closing thoughts.
Oh, yeah, I think in closing thoughts, just obviously this is only the beginning of a much longer conversation, both about North American ACEs and also about all of these other topics that have been covered at this conference, which in themselves are also only the start of other conversations and other work to be done. So yeah, I think we've got a lot to do and a lot more to discuss going forward. But just very glad that y'all were here. Very glad that this conference happened. Appreciative of everyone on this panel. And yeah, feel free to connect with me on Discord. I think I'm the only Marissa in the conference right now. At least you should see me with the mod thing. And we'll keep an eye out. Hopefully some of y'all will connect on ACE Chat, because we'd love to hear your stories and get more North American ACE voices and just ACE voices all over. So take it away, Cove.
All right. I also want to emphasize that everyone here today was all from the US, and we didn't cover the rest of North America really in any of this discussion. So I just want to remind people that there's also more to this discussion that we didn't even get to. Some of our friends from Canada and stuff weren't able to make it, and from other places. So keep that in mind. And then when it comes to media and stuff, I am on Discord every waking minute of my life. It's a problem, but I am. So you can send me a message, feel free to send friend requests. Just make sure that you write a little blurb saying that you know me from this convention so that I can keep track of people, because I'm really bad with names and memory and stuff like that. So please do that. I have the YouTube channel that I linked. It is a work in progress, and I take requests on topics and stuff like that. If you want to see a video on a certain topic, or if you think I need to cover something different, I take requests. So feel free to send those in, leave comments. I'll answer them within like 2 days usually. So all of that, and I encourage y'all to go out there and participate in these things and volunteer for these things. Join us. Yes, join us. One of us. All right, to Devin.
I wanted to say, like has been said several times at this point, thank you to everyone for joining us. In the conference Discord, there is a follow-up resources channel, which you're going to find a lot of links for various Discord servers, social media, other websites, just a lot of different places where you can join and connect with people, keep the conversation going. My display name on the conference website is the same as it is here, including pronouns, and you're more than welcome to add me on Discord. Maybe I'm just old. I don't honestly quite like friending on Discord confuses me because you can message people you're not friends with in most cases, but you're still welcome to friend me, or message me, whichever you prefer to do, or both, I suppose. Also, side note, because someone commented on it, I can't remember who it is, but like, yes, books. I have many. I accumulate them. They make me feel safe. They've accumulated over a very long time. Also very good at getting things for cheap or free because broke people problems. It's definitely a different skill set, but regardless, thank you all for being here. The conversation can keep going in the convention Discord as long as folks wish to continue conversing. If I remember correctly, the Discord actually stayed open all the way through from last conference through this year. So there's been conversation on and off. I know I saw a post this morning where someone commented on video and then realized it was from September. Because that space is held open for conversation year round at this point, and will most likely be kept open until at least next year's conference, if not through it. Thanks y'all for having me.
I think that's a great way to end it. So thank you to everyone who came, submitted questions. Again, yeah, we got a channel for the North American ACEs panel on the Discord, so we could keep talking in there. That Discord has actually been used for international asexuality conferences since 2021, I'm pretty sure. So it's going to probably continue to be used for the next one if you want to get updates on that. Thank you to JV, who's been behind the scenes modding. Thank you to our panelists. You've all been lovely. This was such a good conversation, and I think it's a great way to end this conference. All right, take care, y'all. Have a good rest of your weekend.